welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. Today is Monday, May 8th. I hope you had a good weekend. Hello, I see a lot of familiar faces in the chat. Somebody says I'm running on KPT night train. I am. It's Keri people time. Look, remember when the Smithsonian put out that whole racist thing about whiteness and white culture, where they said that being on time was a function of whiteness and white supremacy, which is kind of racist, very racist towards anyone who's not white, as if they don't have the ability to show up on time. So I'm just doing my part to divest myself of white privilege by being occasionally a few minutes late, because I'm doing the work and I'm trying to. That's what they say, right? Divest yourself of white privilege. That's what I'm doing. Not all heroes wear capes. Some of us show up late on purpose. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. They did put that out. Look that up. We've talked about that before, but the Smithsonian did put out this really racist thing about white culture, and it said all these different values and principles and ways of being were white, like the nuclear family, hard work, individualism. It was super racist. They got a lot of pushback and they took it down. Of course, that social justice is super racist. So it's just the only thing odd about that was that people could see it. Everyone could see it. So welcome. If it's your first time here, this is a live show that we do on Mondays and Fridays. Just kind of talk about what's in the news, what's on our mind. If you like the show, please hit like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That doesn't cost anything to hit subscribe. Get notifications of when there's a new video. We do Thursday interviews about social justice and woke ideology, my old belief system. And Wednesday nights, we do pop culture episodes, live pop culture episodes with my friend Mystery Chris. And those are a lot of fun. And we cover all kinds of topics. And so I hope you'll join us for one of those. This weekend, I'll just tell you what I got to do to get this out of the way. I had so much fun. I got to go see Chrissy Mayer, Lila Hart, Alex Stein, and Keanu Thompson perform in Dallas. It was so much fun, lots of laughter. And then Chrissy had sort of an impromptu bachelorette party yesterday in Dallas, and we went to the gun range and I got to fire full auto for the first time, which was crazy. Full auto, of course, being the thing that leftists who don't know anything about guns often say, they make the mistake of saying, we should ban full auto machine guns. Like, yeah, pretty much already banned. It's very hard to get one. Look into it. But you can go to a gun range in Texas and you can rent one and see what it's like. And it was what a lot of leftists imagine semi-automatic rifles are like, because they don't know the difference. But it's very different. Semi-automatic rifle, just like a semi-automatic handgun, you pull the trigger once and there's one bullet for every trigger pull. So if you want to fire a lot of bullets, you have to go bang, 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 like with your trigger finger. One bullet, one shot, one trigger pull, one bullet. Full auto, which is what they think is on the streets, and it's not. You pull that trigger and the bullets just go. Bullets and bullets and bullets. It was crazy. It was an experience. It's kind of a pricey to rent those, much less to own one if you do have the special license that's required, which most people will never have. But I would recommend it if you ever get the chance to do it. It was crazy fun. So that was a lot of fun. Who else did I see? Oh, Vic Mignon. I always say his name wrong. Damn it. If he sees this, he'll be upset because I got it wrong. I did an interview with him. He's the voice actor who plays Captain Kirk. And that video was called Surviving a Cancel Mob. And I highly recommend it. And anyway, he came out, and I wish I got to stay in Dallas longer and see more people, but that was great. There was also at the comedy show, which was at Hyenas. Quarter Black Garrett was there. There were a bunch of people there. It was really funny because there was this one table of very large women who kind of got upset by about the middle of the show. They started heckling. They started talking back. And Chrissy was in the middle of a joke about Dylan Mulvaney. and some guy in the audience shouted, "He's a man." And then that table of women, they were like, "She's a woman. She's a woman." And so there was different audience members yelling at each other. And Chrissy made a really funny joke. She was like, "We can all have different opinions. It's okay. Some of us can be based in reality. Some of us don't have to be." Like it was very funny. And they were furious and they sat there steaming for like another 20 minutes or something, but they finished all their french fries first. That's what Quarter Black tweeted. He was right. They did. They wanted to finish all the french fries first. And then they got up. Yes, Vic Mignogna. I'm not saying it right. That's who was there. Thank you, Jules. But they finished all the french fries and then they got up and I didn't see this part because I had just gone to the bathroom. So I only heard what happened inside the theater, but I saw the lobby. But let me tell you what inside the theater first. So apparently while I was in the bathroom and after they'd finished their fries, they all stood up and to march out of the middle of the show, right? And they yell out, "Transphobe!" And they leave. And apparently it was very hilarious. I was coming out of the bathroom and I passed them in the lobby, not knowing what had just happened. And the funny thing to me was that I heard them complaining to the staff. I just heard the end of the sentence, but they were saying, "There's all these marginalized people here and they're with her." Like they were angry. They were angry that there were a lot of Black people there and like gay and lesbian people there. And, you know, Lila, who's Filipina and a little person who's performing, like they were mad. That's the thing about social justice people is they feel like they own everyone who's quote unquote marginalized. And it really pisses them off to be like, that was the thing they were most upset about, I think, is I think they must have just been in shock that, you know, look at this room. It's so diverse. When they got there, they were probably like, yes, we're among, it was like a lot of white women. We're among a lot of diverse people. It's going to be great. And then all the diverse people are laughing at these jokes that are un-PC and funny and take shots at everyone. Every group takes shots at every group. But they can't handle that. And they were very upset, you know. How dare there be marginalized people here laughing at this? So that was funny. Okay. I think I don't think I have any more announcements. Oh, I do. The one I always forget. If you like the show, if you come back a lot and you want to help support the channel, you can donate. Even $1 a month helps. We have a subscribe star. You can become a YouTube member here, or we have a Patreon and a locals. So any of those ways, if you want to do that. Okay. That's it. Hope you had a good weekend. Today we're going to talk about, there's a lot on my mind, so bear with me as I try to navigate through this and speak slowly and try and articulate well. I wanted to talk about Jordan Neely. This is all over the news. I want to talk about this first, at least, and then we'll see what else we do. So if you happen to not be on social media, and if you don't watch the mainstream news, you may not be aware of what's happening. But I'm pretty sure that the media is trying to make this another George Floyd story. It's 24/7. They're reporting on it. So I'm pretty sure you've heard of it. I'll just bring up some of the coverage that we can see here. Let's bring this one up. Let's bring up some of the mainstream coverage because this is what the masses are seeing. I'll make this a little larger. CNN, USA Today, like every major, like the national media, if that's all you are reading and watching, which is true for a lot of people who are in that echo chamber that I used to be in, that's all they see. Think about how their perspective of this story is being shaped. Here's the headline from USA Today. Well, first the tweet. Jordan Neely, a beloved Subway performer, grew up in a family of musicians who want him to be remembered as a human being, a family lawyer said. Who was Jordan Neely, the New York subway victim? So that's one. Now, this is a man who died on the New York subway as a result of another passenger putting him in a chokehold, trying to subdue him. Actually, it was 3 passengers together who tried to subdue him, but they're really only focusing on the one. the former Marine who put him in the chokehold. Here, I just want to show you one more of these. There's a ton of these, but let me show you the CNN one. Here's the CNN one. Jordan Neely, the man killed in chokehold in New York City subway, is remembered as an entertainer shattered by his mother's murder. So these are very humanizing headlines, which is fine, except that they're leaving out a big part of the story. They're trying to shape our perception in one particular way. And I think it's pretty obvious what that way is. If you read any of these stories, or if you look at what the politicians like AOC are saying, or especially if you read all the comments from the people who are in the tribe, the kind of the followers, people that you may know who are in that echo chamber, if you look at what they're saying, then it tells you pretty quickly what messages they're picking up from the media. And they're all posting that this is a racist incident, that they're using language like he was lynched, that this was somehow related to race because he was black and the ex-Marine who put him in the chokehold was white. One of the three passengers who subdued him was also black. They don't mention that person, although you can see him clearly in the video. But they're very much trying to paint this as part of their narrative about how we live in some white supremacist patriarchy and it's super racist and it's a dangerous world out there if you're black, and he's killed because he's black and he's, this innocent entertainer who was doing nothing, and some racist white ex-Marine just decided to chokehold him and kill him on the subway, and just because he's black. And that's not true. If you watch the video, if you dig into the story, that narrative quickly falls apart. One of the things that they're not telling people is that he's a Michael Jackson impersonator. He quit impersonating Michael Jackson a while back. And this guy was harassing so many people that there were threads about him on Reddit. Hold on. Let me just pull this up. There were threads about him on Reddit. Let me see if I can find this. Where people were being warned to stay away from him. Look at this one. Now, some of these are probably going to get memory hold off of Reddit. Andy No shared this on Twitter. It's been shared a lot. This was from 9 years ago on the New York City board at Reddit. It said, try to stay away from the Michael Jackson impersonator if you see him. Used to be all cool, dancing to MJ in the subway train, but as of late, he's become a maniac. Sometime in late spring, early summer, I saw him in the train. His radio effed up, and he was angry as F, cursing and bad-mouthing commuters, screaming, "What the F are you looking at? Don't effing look at me." Totally didn't expect him to act as such. Ever since that day, he's just been a scary dude to me. He doesn't dress up anymore, no more dancing. He just asks for money, occasionally shouting obscenities. Today, however, was odd. Sometime in the morning on my way to school, I'm sitting on the bench, and out of nowhere, I hear someone just going off, cussing up a storm. It was the MJ dude. Everyone beside this guy was quite, not sure what that means. Quiet. Okay. An MTA crew was there but did nothing and just let him continue to blow his gasket. The train arrives and I just get in the car he's not in, because I'm sure as F not getting in the same car as him. Dude didn't even wait till he got inside the train. I was scared for all the people next to him out of fear that someone was going to fall on the tracks. Just avoid this guy at all costs. Try not to look at him at all. Stay safe. Pics for reference, and they included photos. And then there were lots of people who included more commentary there, who were saying, yes, I've had similar experiences with him, and, beware of this guy. Here's something else that they're not talking about. Let's see. I think it's this one. The criminal charges. Yeah, let's share this one. So they're weighing criminal charges against the Marine who held him down. Here you can see this guy is one of the 3 passengers who helped subdue him there, the black guy who's helping. And then you can see the ex-Marine who has him in the chokehold. There's also a portion of the video we might get time to look at in a second where that the media is not showing. They don't show the portion of the video where the Marine stood up and put him in the recovery position and was trying to help him recover after the chokehold, and where other passengers were thanking these 3 guys. Apparently he got on the train, Jordan Neely, and was saying I'm paraphrasing, but he wasn't afraid to live or die. He was yelling and saying, I'm gonna hurt everyone on this train. Here's the exact quote. I will hurt anyone on this train. Threw down his jacket, said he wasn't afraid to go to prison for life. So clearly, in the minds of these 3 men and maybe other passengers who were thanking them, this guy posed some kind of imminent threat. And so we see all of these videos out of New York. There's one a year ago, I remember, where you see these mentally unwell people attacking others and nobody's doing anything. People are recording it but not doing anything. And a lot of times on Twitter, you would then see people asking, like, what's wrong with people? Why don't they do something? Why don't they do something? Why don't they help these people? And I remember Mike Cernovich tweeting, yeah, in New York City, if someone tries to help, they're going to go to jail. Look at the media and the mob turn after them if they try to help. Why would you get involved and risk your life? He said, why would you get involved and risk your life in a place like New York City? Because of the possible repercussions. So anyway, in this article, let's just scroll through this for a second. Criminal charges weighed against Marine and chokehold death of Jordan Neely as the NYPD and Manhattan DA confer. So here we go. AOC called his death a public murder. There's some photos of what happened, but I want to scroll down to this part that's not being covered in a lot of the media. All those glowing headlines about how he was a beloved entertainer. You know what they're not saying is, here we go. Neely was arrested 42 times across the last decade. 42 times. I saw other articles that did mention it, say 44 times. With his most recent bust in November 2021 for slugging a 67-year-old female stranger in the face as she exited a subway station in the East Village. We've got other articles here. I've got other articles pulled up with that woman. He hit an elderly woman in the face. Assault. The senior citizen suffered a broken nose and fractured orbital bone when she was knocked to the sidewalk, along with swelling and substantial head pain after hitting the ground. Neely eventually pleaded to felony assault and received 15 months in an alternative to incarceration program that, if completed, would have allowed him to plead to misdemeanor assault and get a conditional discharge. But a warrant was issued for his arrest on February 23rd when he skipped a court compliance date where a judge was to be updated on whether he was meeting all the requirements of the program. So there was an open felony warrant for this guy at the time of his death and what happened on the subway. Let's scroll back a little. In June of 2019, Neely was arrested for punching a 64-year-old man in the face during a fight in a Greenwich Village subway station. And then get this, it's not just the elderly he's assaulted, a 7-year-old girl. It says, and he was busted in August of 2015 for attempted kidnapping after he was seen dragging a 7-year-old girl down an Inwood street. He pled guilty to endangering the welfare of a child and was sentenced to 4 months in jail. Just 4 months for attempted kidnapping and assault of a 7-year-old. Most of his other arrests were for low-level crimes. Many of them for turnstile jumping. So he was also homeless at the time and estranged from his family, although they're all over the media now talking about it, and they're part of this sort of, justice for Jordan. You see there's protests, all the activists, all the leftists are out in the streets trying to turn this guy into a saint. Here's my thoughts on it. It's a sad thing that he died. And I don't for 1 second think that this ex-Marine wanted to kill him or was trying to kill him. He and the other 2 passengers were trying to subdue him. because he posed an imminent threat to them and to the other passengers in the car. So I feel bad for the ex-Marine as well. I feel bad for both of these passengers who try to do the right thing and get involved. But it's a sad thing that he died, but now this is what's really sick. Now we're trotting out all of his past crimes. We're trotting out his record, his mental health condition and everything, and the way he's, had all these other felony assaults on his record. Why are we doing that? Why are we disrespecting someone who just passed away and talking about these, this criminal record of his? Because the media is trying to manipulate us, to manipulate all of the public and trying to paint him as some saint, and they're leaving it out. And it's highly relevant to whether or not he posed a threat on the train. Absolutely relevant. I've seen idiots in comment threads saying, well, the Marine and the other two guys, they didn't know his criminal record. As if that's some point. It's not a point. They didn't have to know his criminal record. They were on the train. They got to witness his threatening behavior. We weren't. None of us, including the media, were on the train. We don't know how it went down. As best we can piece together, trying to figure out what kind of threat this guy posed, his criminal record, his past behavior, his past actions. Is he a person capable of assault? Is he a person who is capable of making true on a threat to do physical violence? Yeah. So if I were on that train, knowing all that now, does that influence my opinion on how he might have been behaving and whether or not they perceived him as a real threat? Yes, it's highly relevant. And it's also going to be relevant if they try and prosecute this guy. In New York Penal Code, you are allowed to use force, even deadly force, to protect yourself or others from physical force, from deadly force, or the threat of deadly force. It's called self-defense. Still legal in New York City. And anyone who's trying to pretend like this guy just woke up one day and was like, I think I'll just choke someone to death on the subway. I think I'll just do a murder. That doesn't make any sense. The other thing I've noticed with the leftists is that they are the first to draw a distinction between killing and murder when it comes to abortion. Murder, of course, is a legal term. And there's different degrees of murder and homicide. They argue that killing a baby in the womb is not murder. Well, it's killing the human being, but it's not murder, and here's why. It shouldn't be treated as murder. Here's why, right? They draw that distinction. But depending on the race of the people involved, in cases of self-defense, they do exactly what AOC did. And they try and say, all killing is wrong. Actually, she tweeted that. Let me see if I can find it. Absolute hypocrites. Where suddenly they don't draw a distinction between it. They pretend like there's no such thing as self-defense. They pretend like they're not different degrees of homicide, that the law doesn't treat self-defense differently than premeditated murder. Let me see if I can find this one. Hang on with me. Oh, wait. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Beard for $10. Thank you, sir. He says, this is why I have no desire to set foot in any city. I couldn't sit by and watch something like this go down. But knowing people would want me dead for it, why help people when they hate you? Exactly. That's Cernovich's point. He was saying a year ago, he basically predicted this. He was like, the manly thing to do, if you're in a place that's not dying as much as New York City is, that's not as backwards and upside down as New York City, the manly thing to do, the strong thing to do is to step in and help people and protect people. But why would you do that if you're living in an evil place that's going to that's going to try and destroy your life for doing so. His whole point was New York City voted for this. They voted for this. So they're getting what they deserve. They voted for more crime. They voted for lax sentences where a guy only serves 4 months for kidnapping and assault of a 7-year-old. They voted for that. This guy was arrested 42, 44 times, and he was out on the streets. Like, how many times did the system in New York City fail the people there for this to happen anyway? That's the real culprit here. You're living in a backward city. So why would you do the manly thing, the strong thing in such a city? And they make examples out of these people. They're making an example. They're trying to make an example out of this Marine. Okay. I don't want to make you guys wait too much. I can't find that AOC tweet, but I'm going to paraphrase it for you. She said, that basically she said, all killing is wrong in reference to this, that this is absolutely wrong. And when you say something like all killing is wrong, you're not making those distinctions that they love to make in other cases, that they love to make when it comes to abortion, for example, or if the races were reversed, they would absolutely make an exception. Do you guys remember that video of the black guy who executed a white homeless man earlier this year? I'm not going to show it because, I mean, it's the full execution, but you can find it. I think it was in St. Louis. Here, let me just do a quick search. Yeah. Okay. The reason this was in February, the reason why I bring this up is because the media did not make a big story out of this. And so most people don't even know about it. They don't know this guy's name like they know the name Jordan Neely, even though there was a video of the guy loading the gun. The homeless guy, who happened to be white, was just sitting on the side of the street. The murderer, who happened to be black, standing there loading a gun. And some guy starts filming it, and he's commenting like, he's loading gun, and then he just puts the gun to the back of the guy's head and shoots him. All of that's in the video. And I get so sick of hearing this narrative from people like AOC, like the media, where they say they try and make race a thing. They try and, like in the Jordan Neely case, they're trying to make race a thing. Race had nothing to do with what happened to Jordan Neely, but they try to make it a thing. And I see the little robots, the people in the tribe who just are followers and just repeat the stuff they've been told to think. I see them saying stuff all over social media where they're like, if the races were reversed, if it were a black guy and he put the white guy who was being threatening on the subway, if he put him in a chokehold, the races were reversed. If the races were reversed, that's what they say. Well, hey, here's a case where the races are reversed. It's actually more egregious, this case, because the homeless guy wasn't doing anything but sitting there. He was just sitting on the sidewalk. Do they know this guy's name? Do you? I didn't. Here's an article from Fox. St. Louis man accused of execution-style killing is in court today. This is from May 2nd. This is from last week. This murder happened in February. St. Louis, a man accused of shooting and killing another man execution-style in downtown St. Louis is scheduled to appear before a judge Tuesday morning. Video of the suspect shooting and killing a homeless man got shared millions of times on social media. Yeah, social media. Did the mainstream media cover it in the same way they're covering Jordan Neely? Was AOC making statements about it? Were the politicians trying to use it to reinforce some kind of race-based narrative? No, because it didn't fit their narrative. In fact, it directly countered their narrative, their false narrative. Police arrested 23-year-old Deshaun Thomas shortly after. He was booked on a first-degree murder charge and scheduled to appear in court later Tuesday morning. Back in February, St. Louis Metro Police said a homeless man named David Saldana, that's his name. I didn't know his name. David Saldana. But we all know Jordan Neely's name now. David Saldana was shot and killed execution style. It happened at a Shell station at Tucker Boulevard and Convention Plaza. The shooting, captured on cell phone video, has been shared millions of times. Police shared that Thomas first shot Saldana in the back as he ran across Tucker, and as Saldana begged for his life, that's the portion I guess I saw where he was sitting on the sidewalk, Thomas shot him in the head. All of it was captured on video by both a witness and nearby surveillance cameras. Yeah, nobody knows David Saldana's name. They're not trying to turn him into a martyr. You don't see pieces on CNN and USA Today that are trying to humanize David Saldana. Why? Because the racial optics don't fit their false narrative. So why would they be pushing stories like this? Why do they cherry pick stories like Jordan Neely and push that? And the whole machine, the media, the entertainers, the politicians, it's multiple layers of propaganda where they're pushing this story, this story, this story, this story with these messages. Why? That's a question you should be asking yourself. If you're on the left, why aren't you asking yourself that question? Why not ask yourself, like, yeah, why are they making a big deal out of this and not the other one? Why does it always seem to be one narrative that they push and not the other? Why do they cherry pick like this? Racial division? Hello? Does it seem maybe that the elite, the people at the top, the people in media, the people in politics, the people in entertainment, for some reason, either want us to hate each other based on race, or at the very least, don't mind if we do? Don't mind if we get consumed with a racial war, with racial division? I'm not sure what you're talking about in the chat, Cheeky Mare. I just saw something. If I'm missing something, let me know. Oh, Beard. Thanks for becoming a new member. Thank you so much, dude. If I'm missing something, though, Cheeky, let me know. Yeah, I don't know. I guess mostly what's on my mind today about all of this is being on the outside of that echo chamber I used to be in. It just seems so obvious to me now. Like some of these things, so much easier to see when you're not in that tribe. And so I think about people I know who are still in it and how they just, like little puppets, you just pull the string, the media pulls the string, and they go out. I've seen tons of them, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. They just go out and they just say, they know exactly how to program these people. They know exactly what things to say to get them to go and be little foot soldiers for something they don't even understand. I saw a ton of these people on Facebook on the CNN article. They don't even know the basic facts of the case. One of the women was saying, this is a thing a white person does. A white person, black people would never do this and do. I was like, did you not see the video? Like one of the 3 passengers who subdued him was black. Not only had she not seen the video, looked up any of the facts, she had no idea there were 3 passengers who tried to subdue him. She just knew about the ex-Marine. She knew he was white. She knew Jordan was black. That's all she needed to know. Racism. They don't know about his criminal history. Some of them presumably don't know that I think some of them probably think he was in that we've all seen the clip of him, the old clips, because remember that Reddit post was from 9 years ago, said he doesn't even perform anymore, just screams at people, harasses people, punches people. But we've all seen the old footage of when he was a Michael Jackson impersonator, and they're using that photo in a lot of the mainstream media, the photo of him dressed as Michael Jackson. And so I think a lot of the public who's just reading headlines and looking at the photos of the headlines, they think he was probably in the Michael Jackson outfit, innocently performing, and some white guy just decided to choke him to death, which is crazy. That's not what happened. So here, let's look at one more article. This is one of his assault victims. Headline, this is from the Daily Beast, a leftist publication. Assault victim says he wishes that Jordan Neely had been in rehab. A man who was assaulted by Jordan Neely in 2019 is weighing in on the subway attack. He says he wishes the homeless man killed by an ex-Marine on Monday had have been in a rehab facility. Philemon Castillo Baltazar told the New York Daily News he was waiting for a train in the Greenwich Village in 2019 when Neely approached him out of nowhere and punched him in the head, eventually leading Neely to be charged with assault in a case that has since been sealed. Quote, he should have been in some rehab center, Baltazar said, adding that he had seen Neely, quote, looking for food in the garbage multiple times before. Oh, that's a part of it that I left out that I should mention because people think I left it out purposefully and I didn't. Among the things he was yelling on the subway about how he could hurt everybody on this train and he wasn't afraid to live or die and he wasn't afraid of going to prison for life, he was also yelling that he was hungry and thirsty. He said he saw him looking for food in the garbage multiple times before. Neely assaulted an elderly woman in a similar fashion in 2021, landing him in an alternative to incarceration program for 15 months. Why an alternative to incarceration program? That's the third assault. That's after he already assaulted the 7-year-old girl, only got 4 months, the elderly man, and now an elderly woman. I mean, how many alternatives to incarceration do you get? And why are they putting people out on the, something is broken if it's like he's back out on the street? And we may disagree on whether he belongs in one of these alternative to incarceration programs or some kind of mental health facility or prison. But the point is, he shouldn't have been out in the general population, and they knew he was a threat. He had exhibited already he was a threat to the public. But God forbid we look at the system, right? That's why the politicians and the media are all on, oh, this Marine. Oh, it's an evil white guy. They leaked his name to the public. The Marine. So I think that's most of what was on my mind about the Jordan Neely thing. And I think when I see them, I don't know about you guys, but when I see them saying stuff like, why are you bringing up his criminal record? Why are you, well, because you guys have made him into a celebrity and a saint. So it's kind of relevant. If the media hadn't done that, nobody'd be talking about this guy's criminal record. In fact, nobody would know about this one cherry pick case, just like they don't know about the white homeless guy who was killed in St. Louis in February. And I've already forgotten his name because it hasn't been hammered into me a million times. Already forgotten that guy's name. Nobody tried to turn him into a saint and manipulate us, which is what they're trying to do. There was something else I wanted to talk about. I think this is sort of, I don't know if it's related. I've seen people trying to relate it on Twitter. I guess the only way I think of it as related is that it's an example of the mainstream media, politicians, the whole machine, right? Trying to manipulate us and to feed us a false narrative for what I think are nefarious reasons. So I said I was in Dallas this weekend. There was a mass shooting in Dallas this weekend. which has been all over the news. And the assailant was killed by police. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he killed 8 people. It was at a mall. And so the left, right on cue, the politicians, the media, Biden, all of them, Kamala Harris, they're all now calling for a assault weapons ban, a ban on high capacity magazines. And so this is something people are talking about again. And a guy on my Facebook asked me a question. I think he might be from outside the US. And he asked in good faith. So, I'm answering him in good faith. But he basically said, Texas has mass shootings. So how are more guns keeping us safe? And I wanted to bring up these stats. Now, these stats are in a video I did a few months ago with Jake Wiskerson. He's a marriage and family therapist. He also works for Walk the Talk America, which is, as far as I can tell, maybe the only organization that's trying to do anything about providing mental health care for gun owners and trying to tackle all of the suicides that are a result of gun deaths, a result of guns. And he brought some very eye-opening statistics, which are from the CDC. So just to illustrate why I think the media is trying to manipulate us, why I think the politicians are trying to manipulate us, just listen to these stats. So according to the CDC, from 2018 to 2020, so a 2-year period, there were 165,000 gun deaths. 165,000 gun deaths. Of those, roughly 62,000 were gun homicides. So that's 37.7% of all the gun deaths were gun homicides. 96,000 of those deaths were gun suicides. That's 58.4% of all gun deaths are suicides. That's the biggest percentage. That's the most frequent kind of gun death is suicide. 58% of all gun deaths, suicides. 5,805 of those deaths were negligent or undetermined. That amounts to 3.6% of all gun deaths. Negligence, like accidents, I'm assuming, or undetermined. 512 were as a result of mass shootings. That's 0.3% of all gun deaths, mass shootings. And only 72 of the mass shooting deaths were with a rifle. 72 of the mass shooting deaths. That's 14% of the 0.3%. So if you look at these numbers, so of all the gun deaths in the US over a period of 2 years, according to the CDC, 96,524 gun suicides. 58.4% of all the gun deaths, suicides. Then on this hand, you have 512 deaths as a result of mass shootings. That's 0.3% of gun deaths. Why does the media focus all of their attention here? Why do the politicians focus all of their attention here? Why is this what they talk about all the time? And they talk about it so much that I think it's doing a couple things. It's, for one thing, it's manipulating the public and convincing them of things that are not true, because they keep using this phrase epidemic. Mass shootings are an epidemic. And I think if you went out and asked the average Joe in the street, what percentage of gun deaths are mass shootings, people would be throwing out all kinds of high numbers, not knowing it's 0.3. It's not even 1% of gun deaths, mass shootings. But that's not what the media tells us. That's not what the politicians tell us. It's an epidemic. So one thing they're doing is they're manipulating us. They're gaslighting us. They're lying to us. Why are they doing that? The other thing they're doing is they're encouraging copycat mass shootings. The very thing they say they want to prevent, mass shootings, their behavior increases them. We've seen this. They call it the Columbine effect. Ever since Columbine, because they focus a disproportionate amount of attention on this kind of evil, they encourage copycat killers to do the same thing. So that's the other thing that's happening. Every time you see these stories plastered everywhere, mass shooting, mass shooting, mass shooting. Look at this guy who asked me this question in good faith. I think he's not in the US. That's what he hears about here. Mass shootings. 0.3% of gun deaths, mass shootings. So I talked about the suicides, 58.4% of all gun deaths. But what about the gun homicides that aren't mass shootings? There's 37.7% of all gun deaths are gun homicides. That's the second biggest group. I think a large portion of that number, not all of it, of course, but a large portion of that number, I don't have the number to back this up, it's just my guess. I would assume it's happening in large cities. Why don't they talk about that? Especially in blue cities. Why aren't they talking about crime? And so I have the same kind of confusion here that I have about the Jordan Neely thing. When I think about people who are in that leftist echo chamber, I just want to ask them, like, why do you think the media cherry picks this kind of story to cover 24/7, to hit us with multiple impressions of this story? Why do you think the politicians cherry pick this story? If they were really concerned about reducing gun deaths, why do they focus on something that's responsible for only 0.3% of gun deaths? Why is that the focus? And when it comes to the weapon, the rifle, why do they focus on the rifle? The rifle accounts for less deaths per year than hammers and fists. So why would they do that? I don't know. I'd like to hear their answers on why they think that's happening. I think they're focusing on it for a number of reasons. It is emotionally very stimulating, and you can hook people with emotion. So they cover these stories not only to convince us that this is an epidemic, like they're saying, but because I think that the ultimate goal here is to disarm the population. And people are usually won over with emotions first. Facts maybe come in afterwards, but you're going to convince people emotionally first. And so they focus on these mass shootings because emotionally they want, you can see the way they boil it down on Twitter. They say things like, if you support the Second Amendment, if you're against this gun grab by the government, that, you're okay with children dying. That's so disgusting and dishonest. But that's what they're trying to do. They did the same thing. Authoritarians always do this, like psychopaths. They did the same thing during the COVID years. If you don't believe the government should have the right to make you wear a mask or to say that you can't go to work, well, then you just want to kill grandmas. Psychopaths. DARVO, that's what that is. Deny and reverse victim offender. And so the way I look at this whole gun grab is sort of like, they're trying to stoke this big fear in us of these individual psychopaths, individual people who will do evil. Individual people who will do evil have always existed and will always exist. They'll use other tools. If you ban the rifle, they're just going to use handguns. They already do. Like I said, rifles account for less deaths per year than hammers and fists, less murders than hammers and fists. They already use other tools mostly. If they successfully ban a rifle, they're going to ban the handgun next. They don't think they can start with the handgun. They don't think that can be their first move, that they can win with that. But if they can ban the rifle and we get used to that, and you have a whole generation used to that, like, we don't deserve rifles. You know what comes next? 10 years, 15 years down the road, we should ban handguns. Oh my goodness. We didn't realize handguns actually account for like 98% of the murders. Why did we ban rifles? We should have banned handguns. I mean, if we would ban the rifle, right, and it only accounted for a very small percentage, then we should ban the handguns. That's what they'll be saying. And because we will have gotten used to a law that bans a semi-automatic rifle, they'll suddenly become gun experts and they'll be like, we banned the rifle and it's a semi-automatic and the handgun's a semi-automatic. So we should just ban all semi-automatics. Then they'll know what a semi-automatic is. Then they'll know. Once they've successfully banned a semi-automatic rifle, suddenly they'll know what that means. We've already banned a semi-auto. Why wouldn't we ban the semi-auto handgun? It accounts for the great majority of gun deaths. So that's what comes next. Every totalitarian regime, government in history, correct me if I'm wrong, I think every single one of them is like disarmed the population or attempted to disarm the population. It is a great evil for a government to say, we, the government, have the right to be the only people in the room with a gun. And you, the citizens, don't get to defend yourselves. That's not within their right. This is why this was the Second Amendment. And the language was shall not infringe. It's about what the government can't do. Our rights don't come from the government. Our rights come from our Creator, from God. I don't have the right to say what I want. I don't have the right to free speech. I don't have the right to self-defense because my government tells me I do. I'm not a slave. I have those rights because I'm an individual. I'm a human. God gave us those rights. The Constitution is about what the government can't take from us. And so what I see them doing every time one of these evil acts occurs, they seize on it, this particular kind of evil act. Again, they ignore everything else. But the mass shooting, they jump on this evil act. And they try and use this evil act to commit a much greater evil on a massive scale to disarm all of the population. It kind of makes me think, I posted this morning because I was thinking about it. It kind of makes me think about, it's like you've got this psychopathic ideology and a psychopathic institution full of psychopaths, the government, collectivism, authoritarianism, psychopathic. And they're saying to us, the population, give us your guns. Give all the guns to us for fear of those individual psychopaths out there in society, for fear of those individual people who would do evil. Give us, the great psychopath, all of your weapons. Will protect you. Yeah, right. Like, right. If you don't like the fact that America has a Second Amendment and believes in protecting the rights of individuals, you're free to leave. There are other countries and other systems of government that might suit you better. Sometimes people who live outside the US, like this guy who was asking in good faith, as I said, they're like, aren't you scared? Aren't you scared to live? No. No, I'm not. I'm not scared of individual people who would commit evil. They're always going to exist. What kind of world do you think you live in? Do you know how many knife murders and stabbings there are in Asian countries? In the UK? How many bombings? Like, there's always going to be people who commit evil. Doesn't matter what tool they use. There's always going to be evil. There's always going to be tragedy. Every time you get in the car, you put your life at risk. You put other people's life at risk. Do you stop driving? Like, what do you think life is? I'm not afraid of individual psychopaths. I'm afraid of a psychopathic government and system disarming the entire population. Thank you, Yarn Witch. She goes, yeah, exactly. I'm more scared to be without my gun. Exactly. And they're trying to do with this, they've been trying for a long time to do with this, the same thing they did with the COVID policy, which they're trying to falsely claim the moral high ground and to look down their nose in moral superiority at anyone who disagrees with them, and try to say that if you support the Second Amendment or you understand why it's there, that you don't care about the victims of shootings, that you don't care about dead children. They use that phrase. Don't let them do this. They don't have the moral high ground. They are using the deaths of children. They are standing on the graves of children to try and commit a great evil, a societal evil, a cultural evil. They are trying to use the deaths of children to exploit those deaths to disarm the entire population. They don't have the moral high ground at all. They're grave dancers. Mark, on point, Keri. Our rights come from God, as our responsibilities he attaches to them. Government just protects and enforces them. Yeah. It's supposed to be. That's supposed to be the function of government. I saw Gavin Newsom out of California. What? Speaking of psychopaths, that guy looks like, oh gosh, what's the Christian Bale movie where you play American Psycho? Gavin Newsom, man. I think he probably puts on that mask every day, just like Christian Bale in the movie, which is very symbolic. But I saw Gavin Newsom tweeting, he was standing on the graves of the children, and he was saying that Congress needs to do something, do their job. You know what? Gavin Newsom, for someone who's in politics and a governor, it may be a surprise to you. I don't think it is. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. But it's not the job of Congress to disarm citizens. It's not the job of Congress to deny us our God-given right to self-protection, to self-defense. That's not their job. It's not their right. Don't let these ghouls claim the moral high ground in this argument. They don't have it. They don't own it. And I don't know. I just keep coming back to when I have these discussions with people, trying not to inflame their sensibilities, but at the same time drawing a firm line with, like, you may not be aware of it. You may think you're doing good and you're trying to protect kids and you're trying to protect people so that they feel safe out in the world. But what you're doing is you're pushing an ideology. You're pushing something that would make all of us less safe. You're pushing something that's evil, a great evil. I don't hate you for it, because I think a lot of you don't know what you're doing, but you don't have the moral high ground and you won't talk to me that way. Well, you will talk to me that way. You'll keep talking to me that way, but I won't stand for it. I'll say something. I won't let you shame me into silence. Don't let them shame you into silence. Don't let them take that high ground. Fight them for it. It's yours. That's it. I hope that I hope this rant was, I don't know. Sometimes it's kind of jumbled if I'm just saying I had a lot of thoughts appear jumbled and it just maybe didn't come out great, but that's what's in my head this morning. What's in your head? What are you thinking about? Is Gavin a Phil Collins fan? Probably. Adam Worrell. That's probably what he listens to in the morning. That freak. He's such, some of them blend in more easily than others, and he doesn't. I don't know how everyone doesn't see it. It's like that dude does not blend in. Beard, thank you for the $5 super chat. Says the CDC went and removed the stats of self-defense from their website. back in May of last year. 3 million cases of a life being saved doesn't fit. Wow, I did not know that. Yeah, well, and they'll never talk about that. They just mock and they say, when's a good guy with a gun done anything? And then they go and delete all the data about self-defense. So, okay, did I miss anything else? Midwest Finest. Advice for countering emotional blackmail. This is a great question. It depends on the person doing it, but more often than not, if it's online and someone who's doing it and arguing with you about something, maybe they're a stranger, maybe there's someone you know casually. In those cases, I usually point out exactly what it is. Psychopaths or anyone else, even if they're not a psychopath, but they engage in that kind of behavior, like they engage in personality disorder behavior, like emotional blackmail, they don't like to be seen for what they are. They hate being mocked and they hate being seen exactly for what they are. Because think about what emotional blackmail is. It's a mask. It's an attempt to wear a mask. They're hitting you while telling you to stop hitting them. And you're not, right? Like that's what that is. So I usually will say this is emotional blackmail. Or I'll say, try your emotional blackmail elsewhere. It doesn't work here. Your emotional blackmail card is rejected at this establishment. like it doesn't. And you can say that without emotion. You can find a way to say it where it's just matter of fact. Like that's what it is for a person to engage in dishonesty and say, if you don't believe the government should have the right to force people to wear masks or to force people to stay home and not go to work or to force people to get an injection, well, then you just want to kill people and you want to kill. That's emotional blackmail. I would just say that's what it is. And I have contempt for it. I have disdain for it. I hope it's obvious. It's cheap and it's dirty. And people who use it are dirty and lazy. At the very least, if they're not dirty and lazy, they're willing to engage in dirty and lazy behaviors. All the people pushing this anti-gun grab, like all the little people, the followers, the ones in the echo chamber, the ones on social media who say, I don't think that they know what they're doing. I don't accuse them in the same way they accuse us of wanting to kill people. I don't do that to them. I don't tell them, you just want to disarm all civilization. You just want to disarm the citizens. You want to commit a great evil. I don't tell them that because I don't think a lot of them do. I think a lot of them are brainwashed. I think a lot of them have good intentions. But what they're pushing, I try and make that distinction when I talk to them. It's like, you may think you're doing one thing, but what you are pushing is a very evil ideology. What you're pushing is a very evil authoritarian attempt to disarm the population. So you can make that distinction about who they are and what they're doing if you want. Sometimes that helps, although a lot of times the people in that cult I've found they mistake their opinions and what they're pushing, they mistake that for who they are. So it still feels like a personal attack to them, even though you're criticizing their beliefs or their opinions or what they're pushing. They still feel like you've personally attacked them, some of them. But I try and make that distinction. Somebody else had Dion. Hello, Queen of Quotes. She says, my family's full of emotional blackmail. I've become much happier and less abused since I told them it would no longer work on me. Yes. Don't let them do it to you. The thing is if you know someone who does that a lot, like it's not a stranger online, but someone you know who does that, if they can see it doesn't work on you, they'll stop doing it. In my experience, anyway. Not all of them. I'm thinking of one particular crazy person I know, but in most cases, if you just show them it doesn't work, like you're not going to get inflamed. You're not going to get triggered when they call you a granny murder or whatever. You're not going to be like trying to show how you're not That's the other thing. Don't fall into that trap. If somebody calls you a racist and you're not, don't fall into that trap of trying to convince them. You don't have to convince them. That's a ridiculous, ludicrous claim about you, and that's not who you are. So I'm like, well, not a racist, but okay, let's address what else you're saying. Like it's not worth spending a lot of time on. So when they call you something like, oh, you just want to kill kids, or you just want to kill, I'll point out how that's emotional blackmail and it's not true, and then move on to the real substance, the thing that they're trying to avoid. Move on to the real thing you want to address. Cheeky Mare, I'm not the crazy person you're thinking of. Of course not, lady. What are you talking about? Is that a joke? Davina says, as Keri mentioned previously, a lot of them don't debate in good faith, so don't waste your breath and time. Yeah. And the more you do try to engage, though, I think you'll get better at determining who is engaging in good faith and who's not. And sometimes I still try and talk to the people who are not, if there's a reason to, if there are other people on the fence who are watching the conversation, or sometimes if I just feel like I know it's a person with a good heart and they've just been severely deluded and brainwashed and pulled down into that evil ideology, I'll still talk to them. Like I've tried to talk to their heart, even if they're not engaging in good faith. It depends. Cheeky Mare, it's a joke. Of course. Okay, good. Selsworth, thank you for the comment. Says those who actually value human life respect the inalienable natural right to protect your life. Yes, which necessarily includes not being denied the means to protect your life effectively. Exactly. And, there's no way I will ever surrender my right to protect myself to the government I need protecting from. Like, that's just the craziest. It's like the abuser in a marriage being like, give me your gun, person I'm abusing, because I'll protect you from other people out there who might hurt you. No, like, no, that's not going to happen. I used to not understand that expression over my dead body, but now I do. It's like, there's no way. And for those who would continue to push this and try to think they have a chance of disarming the American population, like, good luck. Good luck. That's all I have to say. Okay. I think I'm done ranting for the day. Midwest finest. They hate the government yet want more of it. Yeah, here's the crazy thing. They don't actually hate the government, the leftists. I'm starting to understand this. They don't. They just want the government to push collectivism and authoritarianism, push their beliefs. I'm starting to think, even though they are all about defund the police, they don't actually like the local and state police are not fully under the control of this evil belief system and this evil cult, and like the feds are. And I really think that if they are able to purge, which I know a lot of cops are leaving the profession because of all the anti-cop hate, because of the defund the police, all this stuff. I think if they can purge all the wrong thinkers, if they can really get local and state law enforcement, under the thumb of the machine, then all of a sudden, I saw a friend say this and I was like, he's spot on. That all of a sudden we're going to see Democrats being like, tough on crime, got to get more cops out there, right? As long as it's a woke cop who's going to enforce authoritarianism, what we want. Like, I think that's their goal. They will be the first to expand law enforcement when that happens. That's what I think. But yeah, the little people, the ones who spout this stuff, they're not even thinking. They just, the architects of this belief system just push a button and pull a string, and those guys just say whatever. They don't even notice their words contradict each other. That's why they're all, like, a lot of them who are on the left, where I lived most of my life, like, that's why we saw them in the past few years. They're supposed to be anti-war and anti-big pharma and anti-corporation, anti-bank and all this stuff. And all of a sudden they're like, we love big pharma, we love banks, we love the war, like, we love corporations. And we've seen people in our chat. We had a friend who shared something, a punk who shared something that another friend of theirs who was punk was like, they were having a discussion, and the woke punk person was like, well, punk used to be anti-government, anti-corporation, but then the corporations and the government became the good guys on our side. And so now, like, they're punk too, the government and the corporations. And what the F are you talking about? It's crazy. We're punk for the government, and we're the resistance for the corporations and the big pharma. Like, those people, they don't think. They just say that they just pull a string and you get them to support whatever. Pros and pros, damn, that is sad. Yes, and it's also funny. It's really funny to me, though, that's almost, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what this person was saying. The government and big pharma and the corporations are all punk now. They're all side good now. They're all on our side. So that's why we're not anti-government anymore. Like, what are you talking about? So stupid. Oh my goodness. We're the Resistance, sponsored by Nike. Yes, exactly, Midwest Finest. They're like, we're the Resistance, brought to you by McDonald's and Amazon and Facebook and Twitter and all of social media, basically, and pretty much every corporation. We're the Resistance, brought to you by all the banks and Pfizer. The Resistance. Here we are in the streets. We're aligned with the media and the government and the corporations. We're the Resistance. Look at our pink hats. We're out here fighting the man. I mean, the man's on our side now, but somehow we're still the Resistance. So dumb. Oh man. Okay. I don't know why it cracks me up so much. Okay, guys. I'm gonna wrap it up for the day. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for participating in the chat, you guys. And please leave a comment if you have something else to say, you want to help support the channel. It helps with the algorithm if you do that. And if you want to share the channel or the show, please do. And I hope you have a good week. And yeah, I hope this wasn't too rambly. Anyway, I'll wrap it up now. Thank you guys. Talk to you later.